Sarah was sitting alone in her quiet living room at 3 in the morning, holding a worn photograph, when she felt an unexpected, overwhelming warmth wrap around her shoulders like a heavy winter coat. This quiet encounter in the dark unlocked 9 profound realities regarding how our deceased loved ones are active in our lives right now. And the 4th reality holds a warning 95% of people completely ignore. Let us begin with the first profound truth. The first truth is the absolute proximity of the spirit world. Many people live with the painful misconception that when a loved one passes away, they travel to a silent, distant realm located millions of light years beyond the stars. But Joseph Smith shattered this cold belief with a single, comforting revelation. He taught that the spirit world is not a far-off kingdom, but rather, it exists right here on this earth, overlapping our physical existence. This is in the History of the Church, Volume 6, page 52, where Joseph declared that the spirits of the righteous are not far from us, and they know and understand our thoughts, feelings, and motions, and are often pained therewith. Notice how deeply personal this is. It means the thin curtain separating you from those you have lost is not a barrier of distance, but merely a barrier of physical sight. Let us understand what this means through the experience of a man named David. David was a grieving father who had recently lost his young son, Isaac, to a sudden illness. One evening, as David sat in his study overwhelmed by a suffocating wave of sorrow, he felt an undeniable, distinct impression to immediately go into the next room and check on his young daughter, who was silently choking on a small toy. Because David acted instantly on that quiet prompt, his daughter's life was saved. When he sat down later, weeping with both relief and residual grief, David realized with absolute certainty that the warning had not originated from his own mind. It was the watchful care of his son Isaac, working from the other side of the veil, who had noticed the danger and communicated it. How does this affect you today? It means you must stop looking for your departed loved ones in the empty sky and start recognizing their quiet presence in the very rooms where you live and struggle. To live with this sacred awareness, you can take 3 specific actions today. First, quiet your physical surroundings for at least 10 minutes every morning to allow your spirit to become sensitive to the subtle shifts in your home's spiritual atmosphere. Second, write down the sudden, unexpected memories of your departed loved ones that pop into your mind, acknowledging them as potential visits rather than random thoughts. Third, speak to them in your quiet moments, knowing that while you cannot see them, they are close enough to hear every whisper of your heart. Now, let us examine the second glorious reality, which is the divine assignment of ministering angels. Many people assume that angels are mysterious, winged strangers created by God solely to perform grand, celestial tasks. But the restoration of the gospel reveals a much sweeter truth. The angels appointed to guard you, to whisper comfort, and to fight spiritual battles on your behalf are the very ancestors who share your DNA and the loved ones who walked beside you in mortality. This is found in Doctrine and Covenants section 84, verse 88, where the Lord promises that he will go before your face, be on your right hand and on your left, and that his angels will be round about you to bear you up. Joseph Smith clarified that these protecting angels are our kindred. Consider the story of an elderly widow named Evelyn. Evelyn lived in a drafty, historic home and was struggling to survive on a meager fixed income. One freezing winter evening, her furnace suddenly failed, and she faced the terrifying prospect of freezing in her bed with no money to call a repairman. In her desperation, she knelt and prayed for help. As she stood up, she felt a distinct, physical warmth wrap around her hands, accompanied by a vivid memory of her late husband, who had passed away 5 years prior. The memory was so specific that it detailed a hidden manual override switch on the side of the furnace that he had manually installed decades ago. Evelyn went to the basement, found the exact switch her husband's memory had highlighted, and restored the heat. How do you prepare today to receive this kind of angelic ministry? First, study your family tree and learn the names, faces, and stories of your deceased ancestors, because it is much easier to recognize the whisper of an angel when you know who they were in life. Second, specifically pray to the Father, in the name of Jesus Christ, to permit your deceased loved ones to minister to your spirit during times of overwhelming trial. Third, when you experience a sudden, inexplicable feeling of comfort or physical warmth during a moment of deep distress. Verbally express your gratitude to God for sending that specific ministering soul to your side. This brings us to the third truth, which is that those who have passed possess extended capabilities to assist us in our daily lives. In the mortal sphere, we are limited by physical space, time, and the slow communication of human speech. But Joseph Smith revealed that once a righteous spirit enters the post-mortal realm, their capacity to move, comprehend, and influence the physical world is magnified beyond mortal imagination. This is illustrated in the documented accounts of early church leader Jedediah M. Grant, whose vision of the spirit world was preserved by Heber C. Kimball. He described the spirit world as a place of immense order, exquisite beauty, and a realm where spirits move with the speed of light, possessing an incredible capacity to perceive truth and communicate it directly to our minds. Let us look at how this affected a young woman named Clara. Clara was traveling through a remote, mountainous area during a sudden, blinding winter blizzard when her car slid off the road and became hopelessly stuck in a snowdrift. With no cell service, fading daylight, and the temperature rapidly dropping, fear began to paralyze her. As she sat shivering, she heard a voice inside her mind. Not a loud sound, but a voice of absolute clarity, instructing her to gather her emergency blanket, exit the vehicle immediately, and walk exactly 50 paces back the way she came to a hidden maintenance shack she had missed in the storm. Clara followed the instructions perfectly, found the shelter, and survived the night. The voice she heard possessed the exact cadence and maternal authority of her late grandmother, who had passed away 3 years earlier. How does this affect your perspective today? It should banish the fear that your deceased loved ones are sleeping, inactive, or helpless to assist you. To align yourself with their advanced capabilities, practice these 3 steps. First, practice immediate obedience to sudden, positive spiritual prompts, even when they seem counterintuitive to your analytical mind. Second, cultivate a clean and orderly physical environment in your home, as order and beauty are the natural state of the spirit world and attract the presence of holy messengers. Third, explicitly teach your children and family members that their ancestors are active, powerful guardians who are deeply invested in their safety and success. But here is the fourth reality, and it is the one that 95% of people completely misunderstand, leading to unnecessary sorrow and spiritual blockages. The truth is that while our deceased loved ones are intensely aware of our earthly struggles, they do not experience our trials with the same paralyzing grief that we do. Many people mistakenly believe that their departed parents or spouses are looking down from heaven, weeping constantly over our pain, and living in a state of eternal sorrow because we are suffering. But Joseph Smith's revelations clarify that the righteous dead view our lives through the lens of eternity. They see the glorious end from the painful beginning. The warning we must heed is this: when we succumb to bitter, hopeless grief, or when we complain against God's plan, we create an impenetrable wall of negative energy that prevents our loved ones from being able to comfort us. This is vividly shown in the life of a young man named Marcus. Marcus lost his grandfather, who had been his primary spiritual mentor. For 2 years, Marcus spiraled into a deep, angry depression, constantly demanding to know why God had taken his grandfather away. During this entire time, Marcus felt completely abandoned, sensing absolutely no connection to the spirit world. One night, after exhausting his anger, Marcus finally surrendered his grief, knelt in sincere faith, and prayed for the strength to accept God's will. The very moment he surrendered his anger, the heavy spiritual veil parted, and he felt the profound, loving presence of his grandfather fill the room, bringing a deep peace that had eluded him for years. Marcus realized that his grandfather had been standing nearby all along, but Marcus's own bitter grief had blocked the connection. How do you apply this critical warning to your life today? First, replace your prayers of angry questioning with prayers of faith and gratitude, recognizing that your loved ones are safe and victorious in the spirit world. Second, when you feel sorrow rising within you, actively speak to your departed loved one and tell them that you are striving to be strong, rather than weeping as if you will never see them again. Third, focus your energy on living a life of purpose and joy, because nothing brings greater happiness to your watching ancestors than seeing you conquer your mortal trials with faith and courage. As we uncover these profound mysteries of the family line, take a brief moment to subscribe to this channel and like this video so that these comforting truths can reach others who are searching for peace. Now, let us move forward to the fifth magnificent reality, which is that our deceased loved ones are actively participating in our family history and temple work. Joseph Smith taught that the hearts of the children must turn to their fathers, and the hearts of the fathers to their children, lest the earth be smitten with a curse. This is found in the doctrines of the restoration surrounding the coming of Elijah. The righteous dead are not passive recipients of our temple ordinances. They are actively working on the other side of the veil, guiding our minds, our hands, and even our physical footsteps to find their lost records so that their saving work can be performed. Let us look at how this played out in the life of a man named Samuel. Samuel had spent months trying to locate the marriage record of his great-grandparents, hitting a frustrating genealogical brick wall at every turn. One afternoon, while traveling through a small town on business, he felt a sudden, inexplicable, and magnetic urge to turn down a side street and enter a dusty local historical archive. He had no logical reason to believe his family had ever lived in that region. However, as he walked through the door, the archivist was in the middle of opening an uncatalogued box of 19th-century document fragments. Samuel looked down and saw, resting on the very top of the pile, the exact marriage certificate he had spent months searching for. How does this affect your daily efforts to connect with your family? It proves that you are never working alone when you seek to discover your heritage. To invite their active partnership in this work, follow these 3 steps. First, dedicate at least 1 hour each week to learning about your ancestors, even if it is just looking at old photos or reading family stories. Second, when you encounter a difficult genealogical obstacle, pray specifically for the ancestor you are searching for, asking them to guide you to the records they want discovered. Third, make regular temple attendance a priority, knowing that when you enter those sacred walls, you are stepping into a portal where the connection between you and your watching ancestors is at its absolute strongest. Now, let us look at the 6th truth, which is that the veil between this life and the next is extremely thin and can be permeated in moments of high spiritual focus. Many people view the veil as a thick, impenetrable concrete wall that can only be breached by death itself. But Joseph Smith's revelations and the history of the early saints reveal that the veil is actually a highly sensitive, transparent fabric. During the dedication of the Kirtland Temple, as recorded in historical documents, many saints saw visions of angels, heard heavenly choirs, and witnessed deceased apostles and prophets sitting in the pews among the living congregation. This proves that when we elevate our spiritual frequency through intense prayer, fasting, and temple worship, the veil naturally thins, allowing the 2 worlds to blend. This reality was experienced by a young mother named Hannah, who was facing a highly invasive, life-threatening surgical procedure. On the night before her surgery, as she lay in her quiet hospital bed trembling with fear for her young children, she poured her soul out to God in fervent prayer. As she finished her prayer, the heavy atmosphere of the hospital room completely vanished, replaced by a radiant, calm light. She looked toward the foot of her bed and saw her deceased aunt, who had died when Hannah was a child, standing there with a warm, unmistakable smile of reassurance. No words were spoken aloud, but a profound wave of peace flooded Hannah's heart, assuring her that she would survive the surgery and raise her children. How does this affect you today? It means you do not have to wait until you die to experience the comforting presence of the spiritual realm. To invite this thinness of the veil into your own life, practice these 3 actions. First, establish a dedicated space in your home that is kept strictly clean, quiet, and free from digital distractions, serving as a sanctuary where spiritual communication can occur. Second, engage in periodic spiritual fasting accompanied by sincere prayer, which naturally refines your physical senses and sensitizes your spirit to unseen realities. Third, when you are in the temple, pay close attention to the quiet thoughts, soft promptings, and sudden feelings of peace that enter your mind, recognizing them as communication through the thinned veil. That is the 6th truth. Now, the seventh reality is that our deceased loved ones are actively preparing the way for our future homecoming. Joseph Smith delivered a profound and comforting sermon at the funeral of a young elder named Lorenzo Barnes, where he taught that the righteous who die are not entering an unfamiliar, isolated existence. Instead, they are only waiting for us to finish our mortal course so they can welcome us into their society. They are building homes, establishing relationships, and organizing communities in the spirit world, ensuring that when our time comes to cross the threshold of death, we will not step into darkness, but into a glorious, familiar embrace. Consider the experience of an elderly man named George, who was in the final weeks of his battle with a terminal illness. As George lay in his bed, his physical strength rapidly failing, his family noticed that he began to speak to individuals who were not visible to anyone else in the room. He would look toward the door, smile warmly, and call out the names of his long-deceased parents, his siblings, and his close friends who had passed decades before. He was not delirious or confused. His mind was remarkably sharp and coherent. He told his weeping daughter that his parents had come to show him the beautiful place they had prepared for him, and that there was absolutely nothing to fear. George passed away a few days later with a calm, joyful smile on his face. How does this affect your view of the future? It completely removes the terror of death and replaces it with the anticipation of a beautiful, familiar reunion. To prepare for this glorious homecoming today, implement these three practices. First, actively forgive any deceased family members with whom you had a strained or broken relationship in mortality, allowing those wounds to heal before you meet them again. Second, speak of death not as a tragic end, but as a graduation and a journey home, teaching your family to view the transition with hope and faith. Third, live your life in such a way that those who are waiting for you will be proud to welcome you into their eternal presence, maintaining your covenants with absolute integrity. But here is the eighth reality, which is that our deceased loved ones often offer physical and spiritual protection in times of unseen peril. We live in a world filled with hidden dangers, both physical accidents and dark, spiritual temptations that seek to destroy our peace. Joseph Smith's history contains numerous accounts of individuals being saved from disaster by sudden, inexplicable interventions. Just as Mary Fielding Smith, the widow of Hiram Smith, was guided by inspiration to find her lost oxen in the wilderness to save her family from freezing, our ancestors are permitted by God to intervene in our physical reality to shield us from harm when our work on earth is not yet finished. This truth is beautifully illustrated by the experience of a woman named Lydia. Lydia was driving home late one evening on a dark, winding country road when she felt a sudden, powerful and physical pressure on her steering wheel, forcing her to steer her car onto the shoulder of the road and come to a complete stop. She was confused and slightly frightened, as there was no visible reason to stop. But less than 5 seconds after her car came to a halt, a massive, out-of-control semi-truck rounded the blind curve ahead, completely occupying Lydia's lane at high speed. If she had not been forced to stop on the shoulder, she would have been killed in a head-on collision. As the truck roared past, Lydia felt the distinct, comforting presence of her late uncle, a professional driver who had passed away years before. How does this affect your daily journey through this dangerous world? It brings a deep sense of security, knowing that you are being watched over by guardians who can see dangers that are completely invisible to you. To foster this protective shield in your life, take these 3 actions today. First, when your plans are unexpectedly delayed or disrupted, such as missing a flight, getting stuck in traffic, or feeling a sudden urge to change your route, accept the delay with patience and gratitude, recognizing it as a potential intervention. Second, pray daily for the safety of your household, specifically asking that holy angels be stationed around your home to repel spiritual and physical dangers. Third, keep a record of the times you were inexplicably preserved from harm, and share these stories with your children to build their faith in unseen protectors. Now we come to the 9th profound reality, which is that our deceased loved ones carry our prayers, our tears, and our righteous desires directly to the throne of grace. Joseph Smith taught that the righteous dead are deeply concerned for our salvation, and they plead before the Father on our behalf, acting as advocates who testify of our struggles, our faith, and our integrity. When you weep in your quiet room, feeling completely isolated from the world, your tears are not shed in vain. They are witnessed by those who love you most, who then stand in the heavenly courts to pray for your strength, your deliverance, and your comfort. Let us look at how this touched the life of a young man named Thomas. Thomas had made a series of poor choices that resulted in the loss of his career, his marriage, and his standing in the community. Sitting in a small, rented apartment on a cold autumn evening, he felt completely abandoned, believing that no one on earth or in heaven cared whether he lived or died. In his deep despair, he bowed his head and wept. As he did, an overwhelming, tangible wave of love washed over him, accompanied by the distinct impression of his deceased mother's voice speaking directly to his soul, telling him that she was praying for him at the feet of the Savior, and that his life was still of infinite value. That single moment of spiritual advocacy gave Thomas the courage to begin the long, difficult journey of rebuilding his life. How does this affect you when you feel completely alone in your trials? It means you must never believe the lie that your prayers are falling on deaf ears, or that your struggles are unnoticed. To connect with this celestial advocacy, follow these 3 steps. First, pour out your heart to God in absolute honesty during your prayers, holding nothing back, and expressing your deepest fears and hopes. Second, when you feel a sudden, comforting reassurance after a period of intense prayer, accept that peace as a tangible answer mediated by those who love you from the other side. Third, strive to live a life worthy of their advocacy, so that they can joyfully present your faith and endurance before the presence of the Lord. If you have felt the closeness of the unseen world while listening to these words, or if this message has brought comfort to your heart, consider leaving a brief word of faith or sharing a personal experience in the comments below. Let us now reflect on the beautiful truths we have uncovered today. We have learned that the spirit world is not far from us, but right here on this earth. We have discovered that our protecting angels are our own kindred, who possess magnified capabilities to guide and assist us. We have received the critical warning that our bitter grief can block their ministering power, and we must choose faith instead. We have seen how they guide our family history work, how the veil can thin in our moments of devotion, and how they are preparing a beautiful homecoming for us. We have recognized their physical protection in times of danger, and their role as advocates carrying our prayers to the throne of God. As the Lord promised in Doctrine and Covenants 84, verse 88, His angels are indeed round about you to bear you up. May you walk forward today with the quiet, unshakable certainty that you are never truly alone, that you are infinitely loved, and that those who have passed are watching over you at this very moment. Subscribe to join us in continually uncovering these magnificent, sacred truths. Share this message of hope with someone who is grieving, and may peace be with you on your journey.